I'm Peter Block at TCT in Washington, D.C. With me is David Cohen from Kansas City. David is an old friend from the Boston days and has been interested in quality of life and all kinds of interesting things having to do with financial things in clinical trials. So David, we now have a long-term follow-up of the Partner 2 study, a TAVR study, quality of life, now with not the first iteration device, but the second. Tell me a little about the study.
So you're right. This was a quality of life study we performed alongside Partner 2A, randomized TAVR versus surgical AVR in intermediate risk patients. So it's the first quality of life study in intermediate risk patients. We studied quality of life at baseline, at 1 month, at 12 months, and 24 months. So we have data out to 24 months. And the questions we were interested in really understanding was, is it different, because we've already studied this in high-risk patients, is it different in intermediate risk patients? Does the access site matter? We had seen previously that the access site made a big difference in Partner 1 in the high-risk patients, but now we are looking at a somewhat lower-risk patient population. Perhaps non-femoral access would be better tolerated. And in addition, we had a new access site that we had not studied previously, which is transaortic. So we had a lot of questions.
Okay, so give me the answers.
So the answers are pretty simple. So first of all, the patients got a lot better with both groups, surgery and TAVR. A change in the KCCQ overall summary score of about 20 points, which is a large difference. That's like a 2-level New York Heart Association class difference over the 2 years. So big difference there. The real take-home message was that the access site mattered. So remember, this was a stratified randomization. So it's like 2 randomized trials. In the transfemoral patients, 1,500 transfemoral patients, we saw a large benefit early at 1 month with TAVR versus surgery. Then surgery by 12 months was caught up, but there was no late penalty. And again, that I think is important, no late penalty with TAVR, which is important because there are things like a little higher rates of aortic regurgitation, a little higher rate of pacemaker, certain things that people have hypothesized might matter. We saw nothing, no difference there.
Well, let me interrupt because that's an important point, isn't it? I mean, we've always struggled with the business of what do the side effects, if you will, of putting a TAVR in have to do with quality of life. Does the AR make their ventricles worse? Do they get more shorter breath? You know, are there other issues that seem to pop up? And the answer is?
The answer is no. It doesn't seem like there's any differences. There might be very small ones, certainly nothing we can measure in a very large population of patients. The flip side is that when you could not do the case transfemorally, 500 patients in the trial approximately got alternative access, which was either transaortic or transapical. And in those patients, we couldn't see a difference between TAVR and surgical AVR at any time point, not even the early time points. And so that suggests to me that one of the goals of TAVR needs to be staying out of the chest, that when we go in the chest, it's like surgery. And it was not different, again, between transapical and transaortic, so even trading off, we thought perhaps the thoracotomy was the problem as opposed to a sternotomy. Now we have 2 access sites, different routes into the chest. No distinction we could see.
Well, my grandkids say a population is a population, and I think that still holds, right? So bad to stay out, it's bad to get into the chest. We all sort of knew that, but the fact is now that we've moved even past the intermediate group and are doing even lower risk groups, the number of times we need to go in the chest is really very low. What do you think is going to go on in the future about this? Do you think we'll just disappear as far as intrathoracic TAVR is concerned?
At this point, it's hard to justify it. We know it's clearly going to be a more expensive procedure than surgery. We can't see a survival benefit that I'm aware of. We haven't seen a quality of life benefit. So I think we need to find a way, there's always going to be a small subset of patients who are going to need some other approach until we get transradial size devices or something like that. And as long as we do, then we need to find other approaches. And we have several that are promising at this point. You and I were chatting beforehand. We have subclavian access that the core valve has been used for. We are now doing a number of carotid access cases at our institution. You guys have a big experience with transcable. I suspect those procedures are more, in terms of the recovery, more like transfemoral.
Well, I think these trials, everyone looks at these trials and says, rolls their eyes and says, quality of life, doesn't really tell us very much. The answer is it really does. And I think your data now with the intrathoracic business not being a good idea and pushing for other access sites and so forth is going to change the way we think about this procedure. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me, Peter.